In a land shaped by conflict and a time marked by relentless strife, the fate of many was forged through the fires of war. Today's guide delves into the longest wars in human history. These aren't typical affairs like the Great War or the Second World War. Instead, these are epic struggles that span significant amounts of time, with some lasting centuries. If you're a military history buff, buckle up, because we're diving deep into some of the most enduring and brutal conflicts ever recorded. Number 20. Aceh War. The conflict began in 1873 and lasted until 1904. Around 31 years in total. This is one of the first true modern conflicts and saw the advent of photographs to bring the conflict's horrors abroad. The political reasons behind the war are a little more nebulous. Aceh was guaranteed sovereignty and independence under the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824. The opening of the Suez Canal in 1869 started to stoke the fires that led to open conflict. Imperialism was still the rule of the day, circa the late 19th century. As such, when Dutch interests in Southeast Asia began, a bloody conflict was in the works. This did much to shape the current geopolitical climate in Southeast Asia, and Aceh ultimately fell to Dutch rule. The Aceh Sultanate eventually became modern-day Indonesia, but not before around 100,000 casualties were inflicted. Number 19. Ayutthaya-Lan Na War. With an overall duration of 33 years, the Ayutthaya-Lan Na War is one of the longest in recorded history. The actual conflict itself ran from 1441 to 1474. Participants were the Ayutthaya Kingdom, located in the southwest of modern Thailand, and the Lan Na Kingdom, also in Thailand. Like many conflicts, this started as a border dispute. You'll see this time and time again before modern nation-states unified. War brewed due to the machinations of the governor of Muang Thong, who urged Ayutthaya powers to invade Lan Na. This incited a massive war without much in the way of territory lost or gained. The conflict ended in a stalemate, with Lan Na coming away with a bit more land than before. However, the long duration and expenses of the conflict severely weakened the Lan Na Kingdom. Number 18. Guatemalan Civil War. This is arguably one of the most recent entries in our list. The Guatemalan Civil War started in 1960 and ended in 1996, marking it as one of the longest wars in history. Open war was waged by the government of Guatemala and various rebel groups. The Guatemalan Civil War is a highly contentious conflict, and the aftershocks can still be felt. While Guatemala underwent its revolution just a few years prior, that did little to give a voice to the rural poor and working class in the country. Democratic elections abated some of the unrest, but a US-backed coup saw the installation of military dictator Carlos Castillo Armas. Military cadets started the conflict, but regular participants changed with the ebb and flow of the war itself. Guatemala is still reeling from the after-effects of the war. With around 200,000 dead or wounded, it is one of the bloodiest conflicts waged in the latter half of the 20th century. In its wake, it saw the reinstatement of democratic elections and civilian rule. Number 17. 38 Years' War. One of the major participants of the 38 Years' War was the Emishi, an ethnic group who lived in ancient Japan. Like many wars of the medieval era, the 38 Years' War served as a massive power struggle. The Emishi were fighting a losing battle from the start of the war in 773, despite massive victories against Japanese forces. The core battles of the war were over by 802, due to another group of Emishi allying with the newly appointed shogunate of Japan. However, local fighting still took place through 811. Number 16. Chicimeca War. Spain's establishment of colonies in North and South America is a history written in blood and conflict. The Chicimeca War is the longest of these conflicts and proved instrumental in establishing a foothold for the Spanish Empire. The full weight of the Spanish Empire was pitted against the Chichimeca Confederation, a loose alliance of semi-nomadic indigenous people. The war began in 1550 and was primarily waged in various states of modern-day Mexico, serving as an extension extension of an earlier armed rebellion. While Spain was fully capable of waging one of the longest wars in history, no nation could bankroll such a conflict forever. The Spanish treasury found itself nearly fully depleted by 1574, although the conflict did not end until 1590. After 1574, the war moved to a new phase, with the Spanish Empire more readily integrating the Chicimeca into the empire. The final strategy paid off, and a large swath of land became part of New Spain. Number 15. Kongo Civil War. With a duration of 44 years, the Congo Civil War is one of the longest wars in history. It is also the first on our list to be found on the African continent. The actual source of the conflict is one of succession, as you'll find time and time again with empires and kingdoms. The Kingdom of Congo was at its absolute height during the reign of King Garcia Thekou. In 1661, King Garcia Thekou passed, and his second eldest son, Antonio I, took the throne. The war began in earnest at the small border town of Mambwila, sparked off by growing tensions with the Dutch in Angola. The war itself, while being one of the longest in history, is more notable for being a series of succession crises marked by political intrigue from the Soyo, Kimpanzu, and Kinlaza factions found in the kingdom. Congo's civil war drew to a close in 1709, although some sources put this as late as 1718, marking at least 44 years of conflict. It saw numerous kings come and go before King Pedro IV took the throne. Pedro IV was instrumental in reunifying the kingdom and stamping out the remaining fires and pockets of resistance found throughout the nation. Number 14. Dutch-Portuguese War. You might have thought you'd see the last of the Dutch, but this wide-ranging conflict saw the Dutch Republic waging a massive naval war against the Portuguese. The Iberian Union was one of the eminent powers of Europe. Spain and Portugal's naval dominance was something to behold. That was challenged in 1602 by both the Dutch East India Company and Dutch West India Company before the full power of the Dutch government came into the conflict. While wars in Europe weren't uncommon, especially in the 16th and 17th centuries, this one was different in overall scope. It was primarily a naval conflict, with most of the theaters of war being on oceans and straits. The conflict officially ended in 1661, with a treaty of truce signed in The Hague being its resolution. Number 13. 60 Years' War. This long-ranging war serves as more of an umbrella to look over the conflict between French and British interests on the North American continent. You'll find some of the major formative events for the United States here, with the French-Indian War, American Revolution, and War of 1812 all serving as major stages of this massive conflict. The war lasted from 1754 to 1815, with the War of 1812 being the last of the official hostilities conducted by British forces against French allies. This is where the United States was formed, the Declaration of Independence was signed, and ultimately when the capital of the fledgling nation was torched. While the greater framework for the 60 Years' War frames flashpoints in conflict, it had a larger purpose. The war saw the United States expand greatly, and valuable territories like the Great Lakes were integrated into the new nation-state. Number 12. Darfur Civil War. The Sultanate of Darfur once resided in what is now modern Sudan. Not much can be said about the conflict itself, as there isn't a wealth of English primary sources. However, the conflict came about as a result of a succession crisis. The once powerful Ahmed Bukir's death in 1722 catalyzed the conflict. A massive civil war sparked off as a result of disputes between Bukir's sons, with each potential heir wanting a piece of the kingdom. While the dispute was eventually settled in 1786 after 64 years of constant conflict, it had a larger effect on the kingdom. The Sultanate of Darfur declined and further engaged in conflicts with Sennar and Wadai. What once was one of the most powerful kingdoms in Africa eventually became an imperial possession in the centuries to come. Number 11. French Conquest of Algeria. The French conquest of Algeria is another tale of imperialism. It was at a far higher cost of life than previous means of expansion. Algiers was invaded in 1830, sparking a war lasting almost 73 years. While this is among the longest wars in history, it is drenched in blood. Algeria accounted for an estimated 500,000 to 1 million casualties. The French aggressors paid their share of casualties as well, with around 200,000 100,000 military losses by the end of the conflict. This had longer-reaching implications than most imperialist conflicts of the 19th century. The French invasion of Algeria served as the basis for the conquest of the African continent. Number 10. Ottoman-Persian Wars. The Ottoman-Persian Wars lasted a grand total of 104 years, with an overall duration of 43 years. The major combatants in the war were the Ottoman Empire and the Persian Safavid dynasty. The Ottoman Empire was at its height during the war, while the Persians were declining. The war started in 1514 and ended in 1639. This is among the longest wars in history, but it has significant geopolitical ramifications that shaped the modern Middle East. Number 9. Byzantine-Bulgarian Wars. The Byzantine Empire is synonymous with conflict and expansion, given its thousand-year history. One of the longest wars in history was against the Bulgarian Empire. This war spanned over 175 years. It was filled with diplomatic intrigue, countless sieges, and field battles. The conflict started in 680 AD when the Bulgars first entered Byzantine lands. They would later establish the First Bulgarian Empire in 681. The conflict finally ended in 863 AD when the Bulgarians converted to Christianity. This marked the end of hostilities, as the Byzantine Empire itself was a Christian power. This long-lasting conflict did much to shape the medieval Balkans. Number 8. Navajo Wars. The Navajo Wars were a series of conflicts spanning over 256 years. The Navajo people, who resided in the southwestern United States, were continually at odds with Spanish, Mexican, and American settlers. The conflict started in 1600 when Spanish settlers entered Navajo land. It officially ended in 1846 when the United States annexed the region following the Mexican-American War. However, isolated skirmishes continued for several years after. The Navajo Wars were a series of resistance efforts against foreign encroachment. It had significant cultural and social impacts on the Navajo people. Number 7. Wars of the Roses. The Wars of the Roses were a series of English civil wars fought between the House of Lancaster and the House of York. This conflict lasted from 1455 to 1487, totaling 32 years. It is known for its brutal battles, political intrigue, and the rise of the Tudor dynasty. The conflict ended with the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, where Henry Tudor defeated Richard III. This war significantly influenced English history and led to the establishment of the Tudor dynasty. Number 6. 100 Years' War. The 100 Years' War is one of the most well-known conflicts in history. It was fought between England and France from 1337 to 1453, totaling 116 years. The war was primarily over claims to the French throne. It saw the rise of prominent figures such as Joan of Arc. The war had significant political and social impacts on both nations, leading to changes in military tactics and the eventual decline of feudalism. Number 5. Mexican-Indian Wars. The Mexican-Indian Wars were a series of conflicts between various indigenous groups in Mexico and Spanish settlers. These wars spanned over 300 years, starting in 1519 with the arrival of Hernán Cortés and ending in the late 19th century. The wars were marked by numerous uprisings and resistance efforts by indigenous people. The conflicts had significant impacts on Mexican society and culture, shaping the nation's history. Number 4. Byzantine-Ottoman Wars. The Byzantine-Ottoman Wars lasted from 1265 to 1453, totaling 188 years. This conflict saw the gradual decline of the Byzantine Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire. The wars culminated in the fall of Constantinople in 1453, marking the end of the Byzantine Empire. This conflict significantly influenced the course of history, leading to the rise of the Ottoman Empire as a major power. Number 3. Anglo-French Wars. The Anglo-French Wars were a series of conflicts between England and France that spanned over 750 years, from 1066 to 1815. These wars included the Norman Conquest, the 100 Years' War, and the Napoleonic Wars. The conflicts were marked by numerous battles and political struggles. The wars had profound impacts on both nations, shaping their histories and relationships. Number 2. Roman-Persian Wars. The Roman-Persian Wars were a series of conflicts between the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. These wars lasted from 54 BC to 628 AD, totaling over 680 years. The conflicts were marked by numerous battles, sieges, and political intrigues. The wars had significant impacts on both empires, influencing their political and military strategies. Number 1. Reconquista. The Reconquista was a series of wars between Christian kingdoms and Muslim states in the Iberian Peninsula. This conflict lasted from 711 AD to 1492 AD, totaling 781 years. The war was marked by numerous battles and political struggles. The Reconquista ended with the fall of Granada in 1492, marking the end of Muslim rule in the Iberian Peninsula. This conflict significantly shaped the history and culture of Spain and Portugal. And there you have it, folks, the 20 longest wars in history. These conflicts have shaped our world in unimaginable ways, leaving lasting impacts on societies, borders, and cultures. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends who are history buffs. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We have more exciting and educational content coming your way. Leave a comment below to let us know which war you found the most fascinating. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.